Jake, once again, I won't lead you here. Let's go BYU-centric. Is BYU the Big 12's sleeping giant?
I think BYU can be. Now, I say that with this caveat, Drake, because...
Whoa. Please be humble.
You're welcome. No, the biggest thing is that I think BYU, they have aspirations of being that sleeping giant. They know that BYU has got a tradition that they want to be at top of the heap. They were among the leaders in the Mountain West. They were among the leaders in the WAC after the Arizona schools departed that conference in the 70s for the Pac-12. They want to get back to doing that. They haven't been in a conference for 12 years until they rejoined the Big 12 this year. And they have aspirations of getting to the top of the heap. Now, we all know that there's going to be a power vacuum when Texas and Oklahoma exit this conference, and it's going to open a door for all 16 of these teams, including the 4 newcomers coming in, who have all got to be thinking, okay, if we play our cards right, we could really build ourselves up in short order and become that big dog in the conference. BYU wants to do that, but the caveat I'm going to add here is BYU needs to invest. And what I mean by that is they got to put the money into resources, whether it's NIL, and I'm speaking that comes from the fan base and obviously donors. They also got to invest in the coaching staff. You got to be able to pay these coaches top dollar. You also got to be able to invest in their staff on the back end. I'm speaking of off the field. I don't know how many people have recognized this, Drake. I'm probably revealing some information to your listeners on Locked On Big 12. But BYU right now has 3 full-time recruiting staffers. They work with a team of 3 full-time staffers and a bunch of BYU students who work on a part-time basis in their recruiting department. There are multiple G5 programs, including one right up the street here in Utah, so to say, at Utah State, who have more than doubled that in full-time recruiting staffers. You've got to invest in that if you're BYU. And I've said this on my podcast time and time again. Anybody who's listened to Locked On Cougars has heard me talk about this. They need to invest. They're having more money come into the program and the overall athletic department than they ever have before, Drake. Give it to the football program. Give them the resources that they need to compete. Because if you do, there's a correlation. The more money you invest in football, the better you're going to be on the field. And I know BYU fans, they're just like any other fan base. They want to win, and they want to win big. And that's going to give BYU the best chance if they do invest.
I'm already confident in BYU's ability to develop. I've seen the practice facilities from the indoor to the 2 outdoor fields to the weight room, and being on hand, on site, it is not only Power 5, but better than over half of the Big 12. I don't think development's the issue. Knowing it's recruiting is a good help to understand the early struggles and where BYU can go from here. Along with that, you start to question coaching. And I know Kalani Sitake is marked safe for now, despite not going to a bowl game this year. He still feels like the right fit. But to me, there should be some pressure on A-Rod where that offense goes. You could argue that injuries put them behind the 8 ball, but 12 Big 12 teams this year of 14 had backup quarterbacks play legitimate snaps at some point in time or another. That can't be the excuse.
No, it can't be. And you're right. The biggest thing is BYU needs to pick it up in the recruiting sphere. Now, I will say this, Jay Hill, he's doing a very, very good job on the recruiting front. BYU's kind of going into this early signing window with chances to win multiple recruiting battles for high-level 3-star and 4-star talents. And that's something that hasn't really been part of the conversation. We've talked about early signing days for BYU in the recent past. Now, I'm speaking that's more on the defensive side of the football. The offense, yes, they have a lot to answer for because they had an offensive line that I said it on my podcast. I thought they had the talent to be absolutely dominant, and they were abysmal. Frankly, they were abysmal this season. And A-Rod's got to answer for that. You're right. The backup quarterback situation. Jake Retzloff did not look the part. A lot of us thought that, okay, let's see what he's got. He went 0-4. I think his completion percentage was just a touch over 50%. That's not going to hack it at the Power 5 level. Yep. We'll see what they do in the transfer portal. I know they have kicked the tires on more than a dozen different quarterbacks out there in the portal, trying to find the right option. The one thing I can say on the recruiting front is BYU learned a lot, Drake, in terms of what they're looking for. They tried to fit Keaton Slovis into this offense and realized very quickly they need a true dual threat quarterback. A pass-first guy, a statue in the pocket like Keaton Slovis just won't hack it in the offense that Aaron Roderick wants to run. So they're being a little more judicious in terms of what they're looking at in the transfer portal quarterback-wise right now, looking for a guy who can both throw and run because they've seen Zach Wilson and Jaron Hall. When they've been their best in terms of their competition, they need a quarterback who can do it all. And they're going to be very, very careful to find the right guy, if at all possible, to fill that role. Now, they also have other things to address. Aiden Robbins declared for the NFL draft. That leaves BYU's running back room pretty bare because you got LJ Martin, who's a very, very promising freshman. But then beyond that, a lot of guys with injury concerns, and that are his backups right now. The wide receiver position looks pretty stocked. If all these guys come back intact from this past season, you'll have 5 or 6 guys who are proven options. Tight end, you lose an Isaac Rex. Who else can step up there? And the offensive line, you're losing Kingsley Suamataia, who announced today that he's headed to the NFL. You're also going to lose Paul Miley, who was a multi-game starter for them on that offensive line as well. And then two other guys, Connor Pay, who's been on my podcast all season long, as well as Brayden Keim, who was a starter. They're both TBD on if they're going to return. So there is a lot of work to be done in the recruiting sphere for BYU, especially on offense. The defense, we all knew what the defense was. You already were kind of behind the 8 ball there. It's going to take some time to build that back up. But this was an offense that was expected to really, really carry BYU this year. And frankly, it failed.
Defense was much better than I expected the first 6-7 games of the season, but it came a point where, look, you've gotten all the juice out of the defense you can probably get. At some point, the offense has to come to the rescue or at least be on par, and that never happened, putting BYU behind the punch and ultimately keeping the Cougars out of a bowl. Quickly, before we get you out of here, Jake, Daryl Funk, Steve Clark. It's tough to pinpoint which assistant was at fault for certain shortcomings. Were the right guys pushed out the door here?
I think that Daryl Funk, the writing was on the wall. The offensive line, like I said, it failed. They needed to change things up there, and Daryl Funk paid the price there. The Steve Clark one was a little bit surprising to me because I actually thought with the failure in the run game in particular, I'm talking about the running backs, I thought that Harvey Unga, the running backs coach, would ultimately pay the price there. So it would have been Funk and Unga being on the chopping block there. Yeah. But BYU felt like Steve Clark was the guy that needed to go, and ultimately he pays the price. He's one of the great dudes in terms of just personality that BYU had on staff. He did a very good job in recruiting, but the other thing about it is Isaac Rex was, Isaac Rex was really the only tight end that produced at a marginal clip. I don't know. If you look at the other tight ends, they didn't do much for BYU. So I think that may have played into the role of why Steve Clark paid the price. I do think BYU wants to get some more younger dynamic recruiting types maybe into this coaching staff, and that's maybe an opportunity to do that with that tight end position.
Jake, for listeners of Locked On Big 12 who are unfamiliar with your work and want to find more of it, where do they go?
You can search out Locked On Cougars wherever you get your podcasts. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're on social media as well. Just search out Locked On Cougars. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see my Twitter handle there, Jacob C. Hatch. I work in sports radio here in Salt Lake City, so I'm weighing in all things, NBA, NFL, college football. I've got it all. Follow me, Jacob C. Hatch. Love all the interaction. Anybody wants to hit me up, I'd love to talk with you. It's always fun to be on, and thanks for having me, Drake.
Absolutely. I can guarantee you, Jake will be talking BYU Cougars tomorrow. I'll be talking Big 12. This has been, it always will be. Thanks for making this your first listen every single day. Locked On Cougars and Locked On Dose Grande.